Today, we're going to talk about an interesting topic. It's all about money, which is important to everyone, but no one really understands what it is and how it came about. So, yeah, let's just get started.
I
Where
think
did
I think
money
also
start?
also just on that, we are in the point now with like cryptocurrency where the whole direction of money is changing. So I think it is important to know where money came from, what the different
Hmm.
stages of value were, just so maybe that can give us a little bit of a better insight into what the next 10 years look like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, starting out, the first forms of money, or it wasn't really money, but the first forms of exchange was bartering.
Yeah. So like for example, you'd have a cow, I'd have some chickens, and then you would say you'd give me a cow for 10 chickens, right? And then we could exchange that way. Obviously the shortfalls of that is if you don't want my chickens, then I don't get your cow, right? And
Yeah.
it's also like a very difficult way of actually trading.
Yeah.
Um, the
So, that
cool
was
thing,
like the 6000 BC. So,
it,
BC to like
very ancient
600
era,
BC.
yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
Okay, so
Uh,
bartering kind of makes sense. It's just there was no actual currency or no actual medium of exchange. So what you had and what you grew, or yeah, you just exchanged that.
Correct. So it was a difficult way of trading. Also to arrange, like for example, if I want something but I don't want it now, there's no like intermediary form of currency that I can have it in until I want it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was bartering.
Okay.
Then we went on to commodity trading.
Yeah. So in the earlier stages, that was where they would find resources or commodities that they thought were rare. So, for instance, there were shells in some civilizations where they used what they thought were rare shells as a medium of exchange. So, people would get these shells and then they could go to the market. And on your previous example, let's say the cows and the sheep, instead of trying to, or chickens, instead of trying to barter between the two, you would say, okay, a cow is worth 10 of these shells, a sheep is worth five. And then you'd use that as a currency.
Okay. Yeah. So gold and silver were also included in this, right? Like,
Yeah, so I
n-
think
n-
it went from there, and then it transitioned into more gold and silver.
yeah. Okay. So that's the earlier stages. So just like
There
as an
were lots of different
okay,
types. It wasn't just shells, gold, silver. There was
okay.
salt and whatever that's each civilization had. I
And
assume.
probably prioritized ease of transport, right? So
Yeah,
yeah, okay. So let's just say, for example, you have your cows. Now I don't have anything that you want, but I have some shells. So I can give you the shells for the cow, and then I can use the, I mean, you can use the shells to buy chicken somewhere else at a later stage. So
yeah,
almost like money, right?
yeah.
Purchasing. Okay, cool. So that's commodity, and then
And then we got to gold minting. So, well, gold and silver minting. So where coins were actually made. So this is where I think it was Lydia, ancient Greek times. They started minting gold coins to use as a medium of exchange, and they were standardized to size and weight. So you could now have more divisible ones. So you could have like a bigger coin, which was more valuable, and then multiple smaller coins, which were less valuable. And that started becoming used as a medium of exchange as opposed to bartering altogether.
okay, so the pro of that obviously is that there's a standardized value form, so you don't have to go like with a weigh and like, go see what weight the gold is to know what you have to transact.
Yeah.
Shortfalls of that?
I mean, they were still heavy, right? Still gold coins can like are heavy. And a lot of people didn't have access to it.
Oh,
So I
okay,
think it took some time for it to become very standardized all over.
okay, so that's gold, and then what came thereafter?
Yeah. So one of the downfalls is that it was heavy to carry around. So then what they started, and also unsafe, right? So what they started doing is paper money, which is representative of the gold.
Okay, so like an IOU of gold. So like this would represent this piece of paper represents 10 grams of gold,
Yeah, so
and
I think
everyone
there was like a
accepted that.
central authority basically that would have a lot of gold, and then it would just issue the paper money, which was a link to that gold, so you could go and redeem it
Okay, so
if you
anyone at
wanted
the
to.
end who had that piece of paper could go.
Yeah,
And okay, that makes sense. I suppose that's also safer because you can sort of disclose that or hide that a bit better. Where like
yeah.
gold coins is very difficult to actually hide. Okay, what came thereafter?
Um, so then we went to so after that, we got to the gold standard. Now that's basically where currency is redeemable for gold. So, for instance, let's say in the UK, what we know today as a pound back in the day was a pound of sterling silver. So it was actually tied to a pound of sterling silver. Now that was going on from the 1700s till about 1971, when President Nixon, stopped the redeemability.
Okay, so does that mean for every dollar or whichever currency was printed, there was in a vault somewhere the right amount of gold to back every dollar and every coin of silver? I mean, every silver sterling note.
Yeah,
So
at least they say.
there was the gold to back it up.
Yeah,
So every single time they printed another note, they had to add to the vault that
yeah.
amount of gold.
In theory, yes.
And that's the gold standard, right?
Yeah.
So for every single dollar, every single pound, there is some sort of commodity to back it.
Yeah. So for a little more context, pre 1940s, 1945, I think it is, when Bretton Woods, in 1944 actually, pre that, most countries had their own central authority that hold the gold, and then they had their own currencies, right? 1944, to facilitate global trade and to come back after World War II, it's known as the Bretton Woods Agreement. 44 countries signed on to basically say, okay, the US is going to be the reserve currency, the US dollar. That's going to be pegged $35 to 1 ounce of gold. To 1 ounce of gold. And then our currencies, so the other countries, have to maintain a specific exchange rate within 1% of the US dollar. And that's basically Bretton Woods. So the IMF, International Monetary Fund, was formulated to basically monitor that all these countries are keeping economic policies to maintain that peg.
Okay, right. So, and then President Nixon ended that because I believe he was printing a whole lot of money to fund the Vietnam War. Vietnam War? I think it was the Vietnam
1970.
Okay, Vietnam War, Cold War.
It's America. Like every year there's something.
So then he started printing a lot of money, and then he didn't actually have the gold to back up the dollars that he was printing.
Yeah.
And then everyone was kind of stressing about this, so they wanted to redeem their gold back. And then he said, okay, we're stopping that. And then that's where we came to fiat currency, which is money backed by nothing.
Yeah.
Meaning we believe it has money because the government tells us it has money, but there is no actually underlying commodity to give it value.
There's no intrinsic value to it. And like, it's Latin for let it be so. So it's literally just because the government declares it so, everyone accepts it. Yeah.
Okay. So obviously everyone knows that America is now $30 trillion in debt and the world is run by debt and inflation is happening.
People love debt, man.
Yeah.
People love debt.
And inflation is running rampant and the value of money is losing value purely just because there is no anything to back it up by. So they can just keep printing, which they are doing. Right? So that's fiat currency. So the last 50 odd years.
Not that long, eh?
No, it's not long.
You think so? Like, everything had such a long period, and then fiat currency, as we know it, is just 50 years.
Yeah, like everyone really backs their money, and they think the government has an answer, but they don't understand that out of the thousands of years of human civilization, we're talking about 50 years is since we've tried this new monetary policy, and it doesn't really work, right? Like factually, it just doesn't work. Okay, so after 2008 financial crash, that's when Satoshi Nakamoto started Bitcoin, bringing us into the new era of
cryptocurrencies
of money, cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2008 he did it because obviously there was a financial crash.
I think it just showed that you can't rely on governments. It showed that you can't rely on them for something as important as your money. So this was devised as a way to have a decentralized form that you can transact without any central authority intervening.
Okay, we've had some shows on like Web3 and cryptocurrencies, and gone into like a lot of stuff about the pros and cons and all of that. But just now specifically comparing cryptocurrencies to fiat currency in the context of this podcast, what do you think the major pros are, major cons?
Of the cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin, I think, is special because, okay, obviously all of them can be programmed to only have a limited amount. But Bitcoin has that novelty of being the first and nobody knowing who Satoshi Nakamoto is. So like Ethereum, for instance, Vitalik Buterin, if he says something about the network, most people are going to listen to him because he is the one who
He
founded
created
it,
it.
right?
Yeah.
So it's not really all that decentralized and that case, whereas Bitcoin is. Um,
Yeah, more so, I'm referring to like what exactly is the pro. So, like for example, there's only 21 million, so no one can keep printing more to deflate the value. So inherently, the value will maintain, if not increase.
yeah,
Again,
yeah.
so that would be a pro.
I
Like,
think a major pro is being able to send it anywhere across the world over the internet securely without any intermediaries in place.
again, okay, that I guess fixes the problem with fiat currency where you do require an intermediary.
Yeah, and I mean, like, imagine if you're, well, we're in South Africa, but if you're in like Argentina and your currency is failing and you want to leave or go somewhere and you can't get your money out, you can't do anything, that's
Yeah.
stressful. And in such a globalized world, it shouldn't be like that.
Okay. And what else? What else about like this new type of money that makes it valuable, apart from the fact that it's just easier to transact abroad? It's not prone to inflation the same way because it's limited in value. It does also have some, let's call it almost intrinsic value, because in order to mint new tokens, it takes work,
Yeah.
right? Like it takes a lot of work in the same way that to mine for gold takes work. So you can't just keep printing more gold because it takes work to generate more. In the same way
I think
as
it's just not hackable, which is a big pro, is that no one has hacked the Bitcoin network. Because of the amount of computing power you would need, it's unfeasible to do so. And if you did ever get to a point of, being able to override it, it means that you basically have more Bitcoin. So you'd just be killing yourself, really.
yeah, correct. Okay, so closing out points. Next one will be cryptocurrency. It's definitely going to be more relevant in our lives in the future. I think it's going to somewhat coexist with fiat currency to an extent.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how CBDCs turn out. So that's central bank digital currencies. It's basically where they now put their currency on a blockchain and they have 100% control over every aspect, but it's not decentralized. It's still centralized
Run
and
by
they
the
have
government, yeah.
control. Yeah. So that's like a big negative of what they could do. But yeah, we'll have to see.
All right, cool.
Lovely.
Cool.